Hello, welcome back. I'm Henry. This is going to be a little different. I know a lot of my videos have been talking about the code I've been writing and all that fun stuff, but one of the other projects I started this summer and will continue on for probably the foreseeable year is making a telescope. I had a visit with a man named Dennis down in Corvallis, Oregon. He's built a bunch of his own telescopes. I got super inspired. I was like, this is some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen, and I want to be a part of it. So this is sort of talking about the start of that journey, and there'll be multiple videos following up later as I progress, but this is about as far as I've made, and I just want to talk about my experiences, what I've done, what I've learned, what I've read, and all that sort of stuff. So let's hop right into it. First off, what I wanted to build is what is called a Dobsonian telescope. John Dobson is the man who sort of designed this, but it's a type of telescope where you have this pivoting here and another rotating here. It's like a Lazy Susan pretty much, where you can rotate it in a circle this way, and then you can rotate it angularly this way. So you can twist the telescope and then angle it to look at whatever you want. It's just a really simple design, which is why it was what I wanted. You don't have like different counterbalances, you don't have different gear ratios, you don't have a lot of the sort of higher end, more technical, more fiddly diddly stuff that you can use. This is also completely hand powered. The one I'm going for would be completely hand powered. Like you can buy stuff that will automate it and point it at Jupiter or whatever. By removing that, I cut down the price, I cut down the complexity. So really what I'm building is this, the tube with the mirror. These eyesights and these spotters the eyesight is, the eyepiece is required to look at it, the spotters not so much, but the eyepiece would have to be bought. So everything that I'm making by hand is really down here, which is the mirror, which is sort of the big focus of all this. Another thing I want to point out, this is an 8-inch Dobsonian telescope on Amazon for nearly $900. I don't want to pay that much for a telescope. So another reason that I was going about building my own telescope is I want to save some money. It's still costing a decent amount of money, but it's panning out to be less than 900, probably around 500. First off, we have some links here. These are sort of where I sourced a lot of the material. I'm not affiliated with any of this. I am not sponsored or anything. These were just websites that I found. The first one here is First Hand Discovery. They sell full-on mirror kits. Like, you can buy the glass and the grits and the pitch all in one purchase and then go and set your heart to grinding. Or you could just buy the grits, or you can just buy the glass. This is where I bought the glass from. And then over here, Got Grit is a website where they sell mostly grits and stuff for grinding out your mirror. This is where I bought my grits from. The real reason I wanted to avoid, or I didn't just buy everything from First Hand Discovery, is I was trying to source the glass from somewhere else. My goal was to potentially find a much cheaper alternative, because here, if you look at the mirror blanks, an 8-inch mirror was $145 before shipping. And one of that was this online resource that I just want to point out. It has a way of, he talks about, it's sort of like a blog page, but he talks about taking different sheets of glass, cutting them, stacking them, putting them in a kiln, and firing them so that they all come out together as one cohesive piece. I didn't have the resources to do that. I reached out to different pottery and glass blowing places. They couldn't do it. But I'll have all three of these links in the description of this video. So if you want to check that out, feel free to. Beyond that, this is sort of where things started. So right here we see the tiles and the dental stone. The dental stone came from Got Grit. This is one of the big perks of Got Grit, is what I noticed, is he sends you the grits, the dental stone mix, and tiles. These were tiles that I had because I didn't see the tiles he sent me. They were packaged under everything. So make sure you go through all your packages. But they were underneath the grits, so I didn't see them until too late. Luckily, there was enough dental stone to make a second tool with the tiles he had. But we want to use some sort of tile because it's about equal hardness of the glass. You could, in theory, use 2 blanks of glass, but that's expensive. Like I said here, $145 is a lot more expensive than this tile that I got at Home Depot for like $2. And I just got it cut at a tile place, and they did it for free. But essentially what you do is you take your Dental Stone mix, you mix it with water, very small amounts of water, until you get it to look almost like peanut butter, and then you just dump it on top. In the Got Grit package, he sends this, I don't want to call it cardboard, but it's like a hard paper that you can use to surround your tile so you can give the Dental Stone a mold to pour into. What you want to look for is, you see how it's a little glisteny right here in this picture? Once it loses that glisten, you are going to have a hard time with the next step. So you want to get it while it's still pretty glistening. It'll be squishy. It'll be a little bit squishy, but it won't just goop all over, which is what you're looking for. It took me about 15 minutes to get to that stage after I had mixed the water and everything. So that could just have to do with the temperature and the conditions and whatever, but that's the time frame I looked at. Underneath here, you can see something wrapped in parchment paper. That's the mirror. One of the things that the man from Got Grit, he sent a bunch of papers that talked about making the I'm drawing a blank here, making the grinding tool. And one of the suggestions was to put the tile mat on top of your mirror, and then put the wall around it, so that if there are any curves or whatnot, if your glass comes pre-curved in any way or shape or form, those tiles will then conform to it, so you can then have a better contact when grinding. Not necessary, I would say, but it is pretty necessary that you get it flat to start off with, or as flat and even as you can, the tile surface, I mean, because that will give you a more even grind as you go on. So the reason I talked about trying to get it in that still glistening, still soft phase is you're going to want to take a sponge and channel these little crevices out. Depending on what sort of tiles you have, it'll be easier or harder. You can see here, these tiles were really close together. So I actually took a knife that you can see right here. Don't use your mom's kitchenware. This is a junk knife that I've had for years. So I just used the back of it to scrape it out. But what you're looking for is to dig out these channels so you can get the water and the grit to flow in between the tool and the mirror, and so everything doesn't just get stuck. You're going to want to let it sit for a little bit. This tool, the Dental Stone will get hot. It'll get a little bit warm to the touch. Don't worry about it. That's just the way it works. Oh, Dental Stone. I'll talk about this as well. Really important that you use something that's waterproof. Dental Stone is what he sends in the grit bag, or in the grit purchase. But you want to use something that's waterproof because there is a lot of water involved in this, and you don't want something that's going to expand or contract in water or even erode in water, because that'd be really quite a big bummer if your tool just vanished. So definitely look for something waterproof and something that won't break apart easily. Something like concrete is waterproof, but it's got those huge gritty bits that will fall off and scratch your mirror, which will be a super big bummer. Dental Stone is what I recommend. I have not been able to find anywhere that sells Dental Stone besides through the Got Grit website. I went on an absolute just hunt for this Dental Stone mix, and I couldn't find a place. I called up dentistries. They wouldn't be willing to sell it to me. But if you get lucky, maybe you can find some. Or you can just buy it from his kit. So next you want a sort of grinding station, which is what I have here. I was in the middle of moving from home to college, so I just had a bunch of stuff in boxes, and I was like, I'll just stack these. They won't wiggle that much. It'll be no big deal. It'll be fine. But what you want is something at easy height where you could sort of push down on something that's on top of it. You're not pushing down with all your body weight, so you don't need it down like at your waist, so you can just squish it. But you want something at a nice, comfortable height and something you can walk around. And I'll talk about that soon as well. And another thing is the grits, I would recommend separating them, especially when you're opening and closing them. Starting with the finest grit at top all the way going down. This is so you have no cross-contamination. You do not want to get to your polishing grit and just be going at it, and then all of a sudden one of these super rough grits comes in and you just have a huge gash across your mirror. Really big bummer. Hasn't happened to me yet. Fingers, knock on wood. Every hope against that. But that's why you want to keep these separate. And I use a plastic spoon that I wash before all of them to scoop them. I use a different plastic spoon for everything. One of the things that people talk about is at these higher grits, because they get so fine, they mix it in a water mixture in like a squirt bottle and then just squirt it on. But I haven't gotten there yet, so I can't talk about that very much yet. Next, what we want to look at is the sort of grinding process. What I did is, you can see here that I've sort of worn down the tool a bit. What I did is I just put a big old glob in the middle, and then what you do is you pour some water over it till you get it to look like a slurry. You don't want it to be super dry, you don't want it to be super wet, but you want it to have enough that you have water there. If your water evaporates or it gets brushed off or whatever, put more on. The water is keeping the glass dust out of your lungs and out of the air, which, again, really important to stay safe during this. So you're going to want to make sure you have water here. One of the things that I did as well is I used this old oven tray. Again, ask whoever's oven tray this is. This was my mom's. She was willing to let me have it because it didn't fit in our oven anymore, along with a towel on top just to keep the mirror from wiggling. So when you add water, you'll get this sort of slurry look to it, and as you're grinding, it'll look less gritty, less sort of shiny, and turn into this sludge, this slush. If it looks like wet sand, then you don't have enough water. If it looks like slightly muddy water, you have too much water. Just wash it off and start over. When you're grinding on it, you are eventually, you can just barely see this, but this is a flat ruler. You'll see a bit of a space underneath it. And that means you're doing the right thing. Here's a sort of image of, or a picture that encapsulates how much water you want compared to grit. There's enough there to keep it sort of nice and wet, and I just use my fingers and spread it out. But while we're here, I do want to talk about sort of the way we're grinding things. So what I have here is just paint, and we're going to talk about what we're doing. So let's say this is the mirror on the ground, or on the stand, right? With the side that you want facing up. If you have two surfaces that are grinding next to each other like this, the top surface will develop a concavity while the bottom surface develops a convexity. I think that's the right word. So because we want our mirror to be concave, our mirror will normally be on top. So we'll say this is the tool actually. So our mirror will be on the top. In our preliminary grinding stages, when we are still on the very rough grit, you want to sort of follow this sort of a line, like directly on the edge here of the tool. What this is doing is digging out the center really, really, really fast comparative to the edge. Because you have the center of your mirror essentially, let's just draw it here, going like this. So you see how the edge is constantly in contact here, whereas this edge is not in contact, and this edge is, will eventually rotate out. So you want to start here, and as you're grinding, you will slowly move it in until they are directly on top of each other. And this is obviously not to scale, but they would be directly on top of each other, and you'll go like this. Just a direct over and over, just to make sure you get that curve right. You do not want to stick with just any of these curves, and there's actually a very definitive way you want to go about this. So when you're coming here, side to side to side like that, what you want to do is you actually want to rotate your mirror every so often. You want to, if you're walking, let's say, clockwise around it, you want your mirror to rotate counterclockwise, like in your hands. So if you are walking around it, as I said, you want to be able to walk around your grinding stage, or grinding station. You're walking around it trying to get these different sides of the tool, and when you move and take a step, just give your mirror a quick shift in your hand. Doesn't really matter counterclockwise or clockwise, as long as it's fairly consistent. What this is doing is giving a new diameter of the mirror against a new diameter of the tool, which will give you a more even, more uniform curve to it. What we're sort of wanting to embrace is the averages, where if we have eventually, if we just follow the same sort of pattern over and over and over again, we will eventually get exactly what we want. Like if I draw, let's say if I draw this, and then I draw this, and then I draw this, those would average out to the W that I want. So we're going to use that idea to sort of get our mirror, and that's why we rotate it. And you can rotate the tool every so often as well, but that's a lower priority. Definitely rotate whatever's on top. If you are grinding and you find that, my mirror is way too deep, way too deep, just flip the mirror and tool. And then this mirror will be the one on bottom, so it'll get more convex, and the tool will get more concave, and they will flatten out and it'll go more like this. which is a really nice thing. I'll have another video talking about sort of getting the focal length and looking at what sort of depth you want, how to test it. But this one's just talking about starting and rough grinding. So let's go back to this. Yep. We're here, we're grinding, we're having a good time. And what you want to do is you want to find it when you will notice this sort of, I think it's on, yeah, it's more visible on this picture because I was using a rougher grit. It gets this sort of frosted look to it. That's exactly what you're looking for, is this frosted look to it. One of the things you can do is you can take a toothbrush or something, and whenever you want to properly clean it, like how I was talking about when you get to this slurry stage, I would recommend cleaning it because there's a lot of junk on this tool in this mirror right now. So take it to like take a used toothbrush, maybe some soap, and just go to a sink or go outside to a hose actually, because this is like sand. You don't want that in your plumbing. Go outside, use a hose, just scrub it down. Scrub it down really, really good. This is a good practice to have right here, right now, because as you go forward, again, if you have any of those small or those larger chunks that get stuck in and carried along, if you're then on your polishing grit and one of those chunks falls out, you got a huge gash, which would be a huge bummer. But I think that is enough for this first video. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please drop them below. I know this was a bit long. I know this was a lot of information. If you want me to elaborate on anything, I will. There will be more videos coming out talking about how to find the focal length, about fine grinding, about polishing, but I'm not really at those stages yet. So I can only talk about what I've done so far. But thanks for watching. Bye.